Neiman, Brian Wilson, Mary Catherine Ham, today's newsmakers, and you, the Morning Majority. 105.9 FM, AM 630. WMAL.
8:07 on the Morning Majority. Brian Wilson, Brian Neiman, and in for Mary Catherine today is our good friend Tori Clark. Hello, Tori.
Hello, sir.
We have on the phone an honest-to-God person who is involved in the Occupy D.C. movement. His name is Pat Farnach. And Pat, thank you for joining us here on the Morning Majority.
Hi, thanks for having me on your show.
All right, here's my first question. I mean, in this town, we are very tolerant of people who want to come and offer a protest. I mean, it happens virtually every week in this town that somebody's got something to protest about. But the question that I have for you is, what is it about your protest that is so special that you feel like you have the authority to move into a public space, to take it over, to control it? And quite frankly, I drove by there yesterday. There's going to have to be a lot of work done on that park when you're finally through at it to damage the park and have an impact on the businesses who are just trying to make a living down there. What gives you that authority?
Okay, well, there are a lot of parts of that question. First, I'll say that I think as part of the Occupy movement, people are occupying because there are some major issues with the way things operate in this country that kind of transcend a lot of the issues that normal protests touch on. So, for instance, a lot of what we're talking about is corporate influence in government. That's been happening for decades, pretty much since corporations have existed.
Well, let me stop you for just a moment because I want to stay just on this one point for just a second. I understand that you have issues and that you protest. You have a protest and you think it's a valid point. Fair enough. But a lot of people come in here and can protest what's happening with their government, and they don't take over public space and stay for weeks and do damage and destroy people who are trying to run an honest business in that area. Why are you entitled to do that?
I don't think it's a matter of entitlement. I think usually what happens with a protest is people are shipped in town from out of town for a weekend, and the protest happens. You have a lot of people, and they go home. What's happening now is people are staying because people are still angry, and the occupation is symbolic of the continued anger and the continued distrust with how things are operating right now.
Pat, what would cause you? I'm sorry, Pat. What would cause you to say, "Okay, we're done. We've accomplished what our goals were"?
Well, I think it's different for everyone. As you probably know, we don't have specific goals right now. We just released our declaration last week. So I think it is different for everyone, but I think there will be a point when we say, okay, we've had an impact, and it's...
what might give us a couple for instances? What might that be?
Well, like I said, it's different for everyone, so I can only speak for myself.
Okay, well, speak for yourself.
Okay, well, first off, I need to see the doctrine of corporate personhood reduced. Obviously, corporations do serve an important purpose in the...
All right, can I stop you there? What is corporate personhood?
Corporate personhood is the doctrine of treating corporations as legally as humans.
As humans, okay. And how do you want to stop that?
Instance, okay. Well, it would take a constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United. So that would probably be one thing that I would really like to see. That's probably the main thing for me. But of course, there are lots of issues for everyone.
Okay, so if you get a constitutional amendment for Citizens United to go away and you can end corporate personhood, which I didn't know was that big of an issue, then that would be enough for you to say, you know what, we're going to pack up and we're going to go back home?
Well, you just said it's not. It wasn't a big issue to you, so that kind of tells us that we need to do more work, that we haven't done a good enough job of outreach right now, because that is a big issue.
Well, I think the most interesting thing you said, though, is that you don't have any real stated goals, that you're just now beginning that process. You've been there for months now, and you're only yet now coming to the point where you're going to be able to state what it is you stand for.
I disagree. I think if you want to look at the goals, they're not official, they're not written down anywhere, but if you do care about finding out what the goals are, you can check out lots of sources. You can check out our website, our Twitter feeds. You can look at signs during marches. You can look at signs around McPherson Square. You can talk to people at McPherson Square. There are lots of ways to figure that out. It's not going to fit into a 15-second media segment.
Pat, are you guys in a different class, or do you deserve different treatment than the thousands of other people who protest in D.C. and people who get permits and pay fees and go through the process, if you will, to have a protest or demonstration here in town?
No, we're no different. However, this is a vigil. It's not a protest.
Oh.
So it's a vigil. That means you can stay for as long as you want, even though it's public property.
We'll stay as long as it takes for things to change. Okay,
and you believe that you have the right then to set up structures and to put up tents and call that home? I mean, there are reports now. We already know what happened in McPherson Square the other day. Reports are yesterday that there was going to be a giant, tent constructed with maybe even wooden floors to have so people could stay and sleep on a regular basis there. What gives you the right to do that, to create buildings, to put up buildings on public land?
These are all temporary structures. Tents are temporary structures. Inside of every tent, there's a tag that says this is not meant to be a permanent structure. As such, we're not planning to stay forever, and they're not going to be permanent. You talked about you touched on the barn that was raised on Sunday early morning.
Mm-hmm.
That was a temporary structure. That was not permanent in any way. It was constructed, actually, to be taken down within an hour.
Do you support the guy who stood on the top of the barn and peed?
Well, to be honest, I was sort of impressed that he was there for 8 hours and only went one time, from what I could tell.
But do you understand why a lot of people look at this and say, well, maybe we had some sympathy for them. We can kind of understand where they're coming from, of why they feel that government and corporations are, putting some people in bad places or whatever. But then, the trashing of parks in New York, the clashes with police. In Oakland, the same thing. The 30 tons of waste in Los Angeles. The structure that you think you can just build at McPherson Square. The tent city now that's going to be put up at Freedom Plaza. Like, it's your property and it's no one else's. I mean, do you understand why that can anger people and why maybe not helping your cause at all when it comes to public sympathy for you?
Well, I think if people want to get confused or if they want to get hung up talking about ad hominem attacks on people.
Why is that ad hominem?
Characters. Because, if you're talking about filth or waste, that's not something that is supported by the movement. I think that doesn't really exist. If you talk to the people there, everyone really cares about most people really care about keeping the park clean.
But it does exist. There's 30 tons of it in Los Angeles.
Well, I could go through each example you mentioned and talk about it, but I think overall people are occupy these places because they care about them and because it's a public space and it's taking back the public space.
It's a public space, but nobody else but you guys can use it right now.
Oh, that's not true. You can still walk through.
Well, I went by McPherson Square. I couldn't get in there. I couldn't walk through that place and walk my dog through there if I wanted to.
Yeah, I've been to both, and you can walk through Federal Plaza fairly easily, but not McPherson Square. And one of the things I've noticed, especially around McPherson Square, is the number of police that are surrounding the park, and they're there to take care of you and make sure nothing happens. And those are police in a city like D.C. that could probably much better be used in other places and providing care and protection for the 1%, if you will. But those are resources that are being...
The police aren't mobilized to serve the 1%, if that's what you're suggesting. But I will say that Police Chief Lanier was on some radio program the other day, and she was asked if resources were being reallocated to McPherson Square, and she said no. So that is a false attack.
All right, Pat. We'll leave it there. Thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
Well, we do appreciate you willing to engage.
That's right.
Us.
Pat Farnach, one of the occupieds with the DC media team, joining us on the morning.